everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast. It is Sandra Horton coming live today on this exceptional Thursday. And as always, it's an invitation to lean in, to learn, to live, and to lead as a conscious leader. And today, my exceptional guest, and I'm going to bring you up before I do anything else, before I do this introduction. Hi, Miss Jennifer. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for being here. Wow. I don't know where to start because I have this beautiful bio of you as an exceptional woman leader. So let me just dive in. There's just so much richness here.
Absolutely.
So Jennifer, beautiful Mahoney, is a decorated officer in the United States Army with 20 years of service to her nation. Thank you for your service. She's had a distinguished career. Not only has she earned, and I say this, you must have earned this, to be the Soldier of the Year for the Intelligence and Security Command Region 2 and Soldier of the Year of the 116th Military Intelligence Brigade. This is huge. Oh my gosh. And importantly, you've done the sacrifice. You were deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and to Iraq. Wow. I literally just get goosebumps reading this. You're a parachutist. You have your airborne wings. You've earned the Bronze Star Medal. Wow. Like just so many beautiful, amazing, exceptional words. And I know we're going to go into this.
Thank you
have
Sandra.
Over 500, you've trained over 1,200 exceptional soldiers. You were leading over 500 soldiers at one time and throughout your career. Wow. Just a big breath.
Thanks, Sandra. I really appreciate it. All those things, though, they were all my honor. I was honored that I got to do those things. But thank you so much for that. That was a beautiful introduction, Sandra. I'm so honored to be on your show.
I'm feeling the goosey bumps. I'm feeling this is going to be so powerful because, it's not every day that we have the opportunity to speak to someone who has been truly in service of a nation, in service of self. Like it's really powerful, but you are now retired. So there's
technically, I'm almost retired, Sandra. I think I'm like 12 days out, 11 days out.
Oh my gosh. Out. Okay. So you're 12 days out. Okay. We will celebrate in 12 days. I'm going to do a countdown for you. I am. So let's dive in because there's so much richness in terms of your experiences in leadership as a woman leader. And so, what would you say has been your greatest learning, your greatest moment of being a woman and being in leadership? Let's start there in that big, audacious moment. What's your kind of your key learnings?
So I guess the key learning that I had, it took place when we were doing a training exercise, Sandra. And if I can set the stage for you, it was in 2015. It was when I was commanding over 550 soldiers, civilians, and contractors. And there had been a lot of mass shootings. And unfortunately, that's something that we know is not going away. And what happened is our company, because we have so many soldiers and we gather together in a large formation, you could imagine what type of target that would be for someone that wanted to wreak havoc in a place like that. And so we put together, it was called an active shooter drill. And we brought together all the soldiers, all 500 plus soldiers. We had all the leaders in my organization, and we partnered with the emergency services on post. This was at Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and then also the Sierra Vista local police, fire station, medical support, all those wonderful people. So they knew what was going on, because ideally we would have people calling in and saying, hey, there's an active shooter. So we wanted to make sure everybody was prepared. And I will tell you, Sandra, it was absolutely incredible because we do what's called a sand table drill. And that's for us, we literally did it on a basketball court because we had something big enough, where the soldiers all could look down and see, and where we mapped out, okay, this is headquarters building, this is the barracks, these are all the different locations. And we literally showed them, Sandra, there's going to be an active shooter in this area. And we talked through, what would you do if there was a shooter?
Yeah.
Tell you, Sandra, everybody thinks they know what they would do. And it's easy to say in the moment, or, when you're thinking about it in advance, oh yeah, I'm going to hit him over the head, or, I'm going to run and call the police. And, everybody's got these ideas of what they're going to do. And then when the drill actually happens, that's when the physiology of the body takes over.
Yeah.
And so going back to the proud moment, it was truly when, and this is going to sound strange, but just go with me for a moment.
Yeah, I'm going.
Paint the picture for you.
Yeah.
We have the active shooter comes out. This is fast forward to when we're actually doing the drill now. And we did it when it was going to be a surprise. All of my staff knew when it was. But we had the active shooter come out through the back entrance of the main headquarters building. And it was at a time when we had just released formation. So we've got 500 plus soldiers all going off in different directions, kind of scattered all around this large quad area.
Yeah.
And the active shooter came in. And what happened was we saw this active shooter, and there's literally dozens upon dozens of soldiers in the hallways. And we see him come through, Sandra, and just start shooting one after another, after another, after another. And it's, even from someone who was not playing the game, because I'm being an observer, I felt myself tense up and freeze like I would if this was to really happen. And what happened was he just kept shooting. And there were some people that ran, but a lot of people just froze and stood still. And he just kept moving through, and he must have shot 12 people. And finally, a young kid comes up from behind and hits him from behind with a backpack. And just so you know, he had on a full-fledged protective suit. Kind of like an attack dog was coming after you. So don't worry.
Yeah, he's okay.
Executive officer, Lieutenant Boone, who is just an incredible human being. But yeah, and this young kid, he came and he hit him from behind with a backpack. And it wasn't until that moment that all of a sudden 3, 4, 5 other soldiers in that area also got the courage and then they took him down instantly.
Wow.
So I'll tell you why it was the most proud moment for me. Number one, because we were doing something that truly mattered. We were showing all 500 some of those soldiers that it's not always as easy as the analytical mind wants to think through something and say, okay, this is what I would do. And it's super easy. But we literally showed those soldiers, this is what happens. Now you know what it feels like. And the Army, we're really good at doing this, Sandra, because we know when it comes to war, you have to train as you fight. You have to get that muscle memory, because otherwise there's no way any of us could survive being shot at or shooting back. And so I know for a fact that all 500 some of those soldiers, and we actually had, I think, about 32 young lieutenants that were training in another organization come over and observe as well. But I know all 500 plus of those individuals will never forget that experience. They will
Mhm.
never forget that experience. And, you know, hopefully they will apply that to their life. And God forbid if something ever happens, but they will know, you know, what it takes to actually prepare for some type of emergency like that. But then
Powerful.
the
It's so
second,
powerful, Jennifer, I just wanna stop there in that moment
yeah,
because
sure.
it really, invites us into that reflection, doesn't it? Because we experience fight and flight every day
Yes,
of our lives.
yes,
And it's
exactly.
whether you're training for war or you're just existing in the streets around this world,
And
this
I love
globe.
that, Sandra, and I wanna bring that up to a
Yeah.
lesson for our viewers, so thank you so much for watching and listening. So, you know, I'm sure somebody's thinking like, "Okay, well,
Mhm.
that's an interesting story. That doesn't apply to me. I'm not gonna do an active shooter drill." Um, but it does apply to you
Yeah.
at home, and you're gonna wanna write this down because you can rehearse all of the challenging moments in your life. And what I mean by that, Sandra, is for example, if you've been having a hard time with your spouse or your children, you literally can put yourself in the situation ahead of time and say, as a leader who operates from their heart, I know this might happen. And so I'm going to imagine my son or my daughter is responding a certain way. And I'm going to rehearse taking a breath,
Yep.
thinking about speaking from a place of love, and then how you would respond. And believe it or not, Sandra, just that one act of rehearsal is making you 95% more likely to be successful when you have a situation like that come up.
Yes, yes, I 100% agree, Jennifer. The moment of it's, like evoking your observer. It's
Yeah.
stopping that moment of your limbic overload,
Yes.
your kind of the amygdala hijack really is what it is, where you just go into that mode, right? And it's interesting. I love, kind of diving into emotions. So, you're training, you're in this very rigorous world that you were for 20 years. In that leadership, how did you manage? Like you were talking about emotions, how were you able to express yourself, like your own individuality, like who you are? That I like to learn from you in terms of as a woman, as a leader, how were you able to express yourself in that kind of
Oh,
male dominated world?
I love that question, Sandra. And I'm going to answer it not by actually giving you how I did it. I'm
Mm,
going to answer it by telling you how I failed.
mm,
So what happens, Sandra, is, you know, we as females in the military, depending on different, you know, which force it is, but usually no more than 17% and as little as 11%, depending on Army, Navy, Marine, whatever you are. So that's a really small percentage of females to male
mm,
counterparts. And so what happened for me as a young soldier is I was surrounded by males and surrounded by incredible male leaders. And so what do we do when we don't necessarily know how to do something ourselves? We mimic, right? We
yeah.
look up to someone, we pick an idol and we say, okay, I'm going to be like this person. And then you apply their techniques and their tactics, you apply that to yourself. And that's exactly what I did. And Sandra, what I found is that I was trying to lead like my male seniors or even my male counterparts, and it was coming across inauthentically.
Mm,
And I knew this by the way that my interactions were occurring. And I actually had, you know, some trusted soldiers that worked for me, but that I trusted them and they knew I respected their opinion. And I asked them, you know, I don't feel like I've been received well. What do you think? And they said, well, ma'am, you know, you're someone who's very pleasant. Your normal, you know, demeanor, you're very pleasant. You say please and thank you, and you're always smiling. But then when it comes to you leading, you're very rigid. And you,
interesting.
yeah, you're very rigid.
Wow.
And, you know, we don't,
Like physically too, I guess, like you were.
right?
Mm,
Absolutely. And it's like, you know, because I've saw these other male leaders and they said, All right, soldier, you need to go do this. I need this done by 12 o'clock. Move out. So that's what I did. All right, soldier, I need you to do this. I need it by this time. Go move out. But then in my normal day, I'm like happy and,
Yeah.
And I struggled with it for a while, Sandra, and I really felt like, well, but that's what leadership looks like, because that's what I saw. But it wasn't until I got more confidence in myself and I started to lead from my heart. That's why I love the title of your podcast. I don't believe there's no other way. It has to be leading from your heart, Sandra. And when I started to lead from my heart, I didn't have to give orders and speak like a robot and, unemotional. No, I would just say, oh, hey, Lieutenant Boone, could you go do this for me? And I'm asking it. They know it's an order. Soldiers know it's still an order coming from a commanding officer. But that was me. That was my heart. That was my style. That was my personality. And after that, things just really started to move. And things started to just feel so much more natural. And I started to really feel the connection with my soldiers. So, that's how I learned, unfortunately, was by doing the wrong thing. But I tell you, if you can do it in the United States Army, we're the greatest fighting forces in the world, dominated by, combat arms and men who are, we have women now in the combat arena as well. That's very new within the last few years. But if you can, as a female, be yourself and operate from that feminine power in the United States Army, you can do it anywhere, Sandra.
Wow. And I think that's so powerful. And I commend you for that, because it takes courage. It takes an alignment of that calling and finding your calling to stand in that space. Because, the story I tell myself, I got my courage from having other experiences where I had to find my voice. I had to stand up. I talk about the 3 L's earlier, like the learning phase of evolving, of really going within. As you said, you observed outside, but it was not until you went within to really identify that. And so, from this learning, how do you now apply that in your kind of transition, your new life? How are you living your values now? Because that was very, I would think, very focused, intentional work that you were doing. Right. Now you have this opportunity to bring it into your new world. So how are you going to live from that old way of being, that then and there, to your here and now?
I love that, Sandra. And it is something that has been the most important lesson that I've learned in my life, which is that you have to be you. You have to be you. Now, some people will take that and say, well, I'm not going to adapt to society, or I'm going to be wild and crazy. And, if I'm going to be however I am, and if people don't like it, then they don't like it. I'm not speaking to that extreme. I'm not saying, you shouldn't be conscious of your interactions with other people, but you need to be authentically you. And from that lesson that I learned, how am I living that and applying it now, Sandra? I am in every moment of my day focusing on being authentic. In the past, I would look at a situation when I'm going to the supermarket. Okay, this is me in the supermarket. I'm the CEO of my company, and I'm sitting in front of my employees. And this is Jennifer sitting in front of employees. I'm going out to the park and being free and having fun. Oh, this is Jennifer having free and having fun. I believe you can be the same you wherever you are. And that's something that I'm really working on, Sandra, because especially having felt like I had to have a certain identity in the military, and I could only present a certain image in the military, it is very challenging for me to allow just my true heart to come through and to show and to be authentic in any situation.
Yeah, and you really make me reflect upon just as we develop and change and we become who we are destined to be. It really, for me, I talk about the values, I talk about being courageous. And for many people, they don't take the time, and I'm being mindful of the words and how I'm speaking here, is to take the time now to learn what your values are. What is it that's so important to you? Like for me, I'm all about openness and independence and, heart is obviously important to me. So I would offer for all those, if you haven't already explored your values and how you want to show up in this world, to do that work now.
May I share
Challenge.
a story that highlights the
Yeah,
importance of that, Sandra?
sure. Thanks.
So in 2017, 2018, I was in the Republic of Korea, and my husband at the time was a commander, and he had the headquarters company for the 8th Army in Korea. So under his command, he had Lieutenant General Vandal. Now, Lieutenant General Vandal was a highly decorated, incredibly impressive general, a lieutenant general, 3-star. And I'll give you an example because we knew these stories because he was under my husband's command. And he was getting ready to go visit his son, who was a Marine stationed in Japan. And he was going over to visit his son when Kim Jong-un shot a missile over Hawaii. And so obviously that's high alert, potential war posture that we go into. And so Lieutenant General Vandal flew home. So he didn't get to spend time with his son. Now, that was a very common occurrence for him and also for many, many Army officers. They always put the mission first. Their family sits in the background and waits until they get out of the military or even retire before they really give them that time, that love, that connection. And what's such an important story for your listeners, Sandra, for you at home, is that General Vandal decided to retire. And upon doing his retirement medical exam, discovered he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh, wow.
General Vandal had talked about how excited he was to finally be able to put his family first because his entire 30 plus years in the military had always put the Army first. And the time that he was looking forward to dedicating to his family,
Yeah.
he died before he retired, Sandra.
Oh,
And that's why your lesson is, I think, one of the most important for anybody listening right now. Should write this down. Know your values. Because whether you're a general in the Army, a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, if one of your primary values is not honoring and celebrating and building the connection with your family, you will never put them where they deserve to be.
Wow, that is very heart-wrenching, but very powerful too, though. It shows us, it reminds us, yeah, to do exactly that. And honoring also ourselves, Jennifer, one of the things that you said a little bit earlier, which I think is really key, and I love to just kind of flow and just see where the conversation goes because, for so many people listening, they go, wow, yeah, I know people who've gone through that. They give of themselves to their company, the service to to their country. And then at the end of the day, they don't have anything that at the end of the day, everything has been given. But
That's right.
what are you left with to then be able to give?
That's
And I
right.
think that's the setting the boundaries, and it also comes from having gratitude. It's about mindset. It's about having that positive momentum to have these joyfulness, these opportunities every single day. And I found when I lived in my numb state for 34 years
Oh,
before I
Sandra.
awokened, like I was all brain. I was all brain in in what I did.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that resonates, like you're
Yes.
in that kind of constant routine, you have to stop yourself. So how have you been able to, purposefully now focus on you to set boundaries, to self-care, to, that moment of really just, hey, I need something for me now. And I
Oh,
don't
I
want to be
laugh.
like that
I'm
general.
I'm laughing, Sandra, because you are in my heart, you're in my mind. I'm going through this right now. So I believe, if I was going to say the second most important lesson for life is that you need to constantly be focused on understanding yourself and how you improve. And I'm not
Yes.
saying like every single minute of the day you have to be like, oh, I could have done this better. And
Yeah.
that's let's exercise, doing things in the middle here.
Yeah.
But we do need to evaluate ourselves, because if we don't, we have no gauge as to where we're going and how we're doing and how we can improve. If it's not measured, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't improve. And so for me, one thing that I discovered about myself is that I was putting everything I had into the military, everything. Even my marriage, we both really were married to the military.
Mhm.
And I also found that my self-worth was coming from my accomplishments and my doing.
Mhm.
And so if I wasn't constantly doing and constantly, succeeding and striving towards a mission, then I had no self-worth, Sandra.
Yeah.
I really, and the way that I recognize this, I don't tell you these things to impress you, but I won a $50,000 package for publicity and publishing my own book. I was traveling the world. I was speaking on stages. And again, I don't say that to impress you, but to impress upon you that even though I was doing so well on the outside, I was actually suicidal, Sandra. And the
Mm.
reason was because I had so much leave saved up in the Army. And so I was working 1 day a week, and this was for several months because I had that much leave. I had never taken vacations.
Yeah.
And so I had so much leave saved up that for, Tuesday through Friday, I was living my own life, and I was training and working with business advisors to set up my now business. But the problem was, Sandra, I didn't have anybody waiting on me. I didn't have anybody looking to me for answers. I didn't have anybody to be accountable for other than myself. And
Mhm.
even though I was winning and doing these great things, because my self-worth had been as an officer who people relied on, now nobody relies on me. I was suicidal, Sandra. And it really caused me to look and truly evaluate how I was living my life, what values I was placing at the forefront. And what I realized is that I was placing significance in the forefront of my values. And now I've learned to focus on contribution and growth as my primary values in life. And so what does that look like now? I realize I need some time, Sandra. I need to slow down and not tell myself that I'm, excuse my language, a piece of shit. This is just my own head. I'm just, forgive me, viewers, but
I know.
listeners, you need to know this is what's in my
Oh,
head. Like, Jen,
yeah.
you are a piece of shit. If you didn't work a 12 to 15-hour day, you are lazy, you are nothing. And so
Mm.
I literally had to say, okay, I need to change this mentality. And so what I've done, Sandra, is for the entire month of February, because I retire officially on the 28th of February,
Okay.
I've told myself I am not doing any work. So if it feels like I'm working because I'm earning a living, or I'm, needing to do something to win or to accomplish, I'm not allowing myself to do it. And so what
Mhm.
that means is I normally wake up at 4:30 every morning. I'm letting myself sleep in, which feels really weird. I am not scheduling things in the day towards my business. I told everybody I'm not, I'm taking a break in February. And it is so hard, Sandra. every single day. I want to pick up and
And
do.
do, and do. And that's the thing that, I want to, acknowledge, because for many people, and I count myself a doer for sure, one big step that I made was commit to meditation
Oh,
first thing in the morning,
I love it.
and to stop not only the chatter that was in my mind, because thankfully it's gone now, because I've been very persistent and consistent with reprogramming my subconscious mind. Because this is a piece I think a lot of people don't realize. You can change now. It's a choice.
Yes.
It may not, depends on how you look at it. Some can feel it, that it's
Right.
challenging. It's going to be this huge, big thing. But actually, when we make the choice to change, we can actually do it easily with grace.
That's beautiful, Sandra. And there's been so many studies, and so many books written about famous and very successful people. And almost every single one of them apply that practice every day, because it is absolutely necessary to quiet the mind. And
Just
so,
stop yourself, like physically, like just stop yourself, especially if you've been en route and doing external only in here, not connecting to here. This is the big piece of making that choice today, now,
right,
to go within and to
right.
say, okay, what am I feeling? How am I feeling my emotions?
So powerful, Sandra. And one of the young ladies that I work with, that I'm partnering one of my endeavors with, it is called Leading as a Parent, and she is a clinical therapist specializing in PTSD and trauma. And she talks about exactly that, the importance of expressing your emotions and recognizing them, because what happens if we don't, we push them down and push them. They're there. You can't
Yep.
pretend they're not there, right?
Yeah,
And
they
so
are.
what that does is that creates anxiety, that creates disease within our body, and it creates elevated blood pressure. I mean, we could go on and on about,
Cortisol, all that
exactly,
lovely
exactly. And
stress hormones.
it is, it's no longer, some people could say, oh, that's woo woo. It's no longer woo woo to
Science.
talk about meditating. It is a proven scientific fact that we need to give ourselves this time, and we need to be able to express our emotions. Otherwise, it's going to end up manifesting physically in a very detrimental way.
Yeah. And there's, the two facets too, Jennifer. It's learning not only how to express them, but to understand their expression within ourselves. So where we're feeling them, then how we express them. I find, being an EQI certified practitioner, that it's so powerful, because, I can only live my example as, and then also the clients that I serve. But the expression from aggression, which tends to show up when we don't understand ourselves,
Wow.
versus being able to assert ourselves. And I'm wondering, in your journey from this transition space, because you were in assertive position, you had, you're in the military, to now changing to still feeling your power, feeling, within yourself, but expressing in a way that's still assertive, but not aggressive.
Right.
There's a line there in terms of how we show up.
Right. Absolutely, Sandra. And I find in general, and this is something I wish I knew when I was in the military, because I think back to my Afghanistan deployment. It was an incredibly stressful. We were losing soldiers every single night. We were attending what's called a ramp ceremony, which is where you go and you salute the casket that has the United States flag draped over it, and you send off your fellow warriors to go back home. And it was incredibly stressful. And I remember going on my mid-tour leave. I went on a cruise to the Caribbean with my parents. And here I am, surrounded by one of the most beautiful places in the world, with nothing but all the food you could eat, music, fun, celebration. And I remember just snapping at my parents, like biting their head off when they asked a simple question. And back then, Sandra, I didn't have the emotional intelligence to understand I have to deal with these emotions. I have to find a way to release these emotions. Otherwise, it's going to come out in this very aggressive way. And so, quite frankly, Sandra, I don't even think it's something you have to truly focus on, how do I be assertive without being aggressive? If you've done the work, it will naturally happen. I truly believe that, Sandra. Just be an example, my life as an example, I am able to take a breath. I'm able to pause. And just even for that moment, that short moment allows you to just, I'm going to respond from my heart in a loving manner versus I'm coming directly at you because I've got these emotions pushing themselves out and I don't, it's really powerful, Sandra. And when you do the inner work yourself, it will naturally reflect in your engagements with others.
Yeah, because people feel it, don't they? Like
They
people
really do.
genuinely feel it. And one of the things that I'm just enjoying this time. I know we're over our time, but I'm
Oh,
just
no.
enjoying talking with you and just I want to keep chatting because we talked about we're talking about living, but also in that leading space and helping in the corporate world. I know you're doing a lot of great work supporting, or can you share with our listeners how you've taken and transitioned and are exploring working with leaders, all that kind of loveliness that I know you're
Absolutely,
doing now?
absolutely, Sandra. Yes, so I own my own business now. It's called Elite Leader Solutions, and we offer consulting to businesses, whether it be in leadership specifically and how to lead an organization, or whether it be in management techniques, improving your processes and your bottom dollar. And what I have found is that unfortunately, the corporate world really doesn't place very much emphasis on leadership. And the comparison that I use for that is, the world's greatest training force, the United States Army. As an officer, we spent at least a year almost every few years focused on leadership training.
Yeah.
As a lieutenant, you had to go to school to become a lieutenant, where we focused on leadership schools. And when you get promoted to captain, there's what's called the captain's career course. When you get ready to move into the field grade, there's also a school for field grade officers. And so we always periodically take time to send our leaders to leadership school because it's absolutely everything, Sandra. It's absolutely everything. And unfortunately, there's so many people that are unhappy. Don't get me wrong, there's people unhappy with their leadership in the military too. But there's so many people unhappy with their day-to-day lives because of their professional work experience. I think if we were to do a poll and to say, like, how many people enjoy their, if we asked who's unhappy with your work, and then we did a poll and said, why are you unhappy? I guarantee you at least 50% of them would say because they don't like their boss.
100%. I mean, Harvard,
Right?
there's so many different, researchers that are saying this. Absolutely. And even now, with that whole new movement, and it is very powerful because there's so much opportunity. And this is why I think this is where I'm working towards, touching 1 million lives to help individuals become conscious leaders.
I love that.
We have to wake up. It's not about me. It's about creating that culture of we.
That's exactly it. And Sandra,
Changing.
if there's one point that I could make to your listeners, to someone who's a business owner or serves in a management, to me, which management equals leadership, it should. And really, we all need leadership training, even how to lead our own lives and our own families. But if you're that business owner and you're thinking, oh, leadership, that's the soft skills. I'm worried about my bottom dollar. How do I make my team more productive? How do I increase our sales? Well, you do that by being a better leader. Because I'm telling you, Sandra, when from my experience in the military, people will say to me, oh, Jen, it's so much easier to lead soldiers in the military than being a leader in corporate. because you can just give them orders and they have to follow. Let me explain something to you, Sandra. A soldier that is in your unit, they can't quit. They can't quit. They have to stay there, but they also don't get to choose where they are.
Right.
So what that means is soldiers get really good at knowing, how can I do the least bit of work without getting in trouble? Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and we see that in the corporate world. They
And
disengage, they do the minimal,
right,
they're not engaged fully with their heart.
right. Yeah,
They
that
just
quiet quitting. And
quiet
but
quitting.
even more so in the military, like I said, the difference between being a leader in the military and a leader in corporate, you can't fire an employee. There gets to a point with that quiet quitting when you've got enough, if you're leading well and you've put in the work and you've done the counseling and you put the work in the employee, that you can say, sorry, Joe, you're not cutting it anymore. I'm going to have to let you go. In the military, you can't do that. So that's why leadership is so important. And that's why the military recognizes we have to be able to lead. And I'm telling you, Sandra, if your listeners, your business owners would invest just a little bit of money in working with someone like you, Sandra, they will see their bottom dollar increase. They will see the retention of their employees. It really is a direct correlation, but people don't view it that way. And so they don't invest the money in leadership training.
Yeah. And that is so true. But importantly, though, I always say that there's and this is why we do what we do, is that we follow our passions and we keep offering the opportunities.
Love it.
And this is the key, right? So I want to, thank you, because I know before we end, there's some beautiful new opportunities that you're looking to explore, to really give back and elevate the leadership, the impact, the positive impact around the globe. So can you share some of those exciting new kind of opportunities that you're looking
Yes.
to develop?
Yes, absolutely, Sandra. So Elite Leader Solutions, my business is really focused on giving back. And 20% of our proceeds of any financial investments people make, any business deals that we make, 20% actually goes into our nonprofit side, which we are building right now. And the first one that we are getting off the ground is working with inner city youth, and it is providing them leadership and life skills. And we're really working hard to gather up volunteers and to get the program solidified so that we can actually start getting it into some of these inner city areas within Dallas, Texas. And so I'd love if your listeners would subscribe to my professional page on Facebook, which is Elite Leadership with Major JJ Mahoney. And if you just subscribe to that, I'm always trying to put out great content, uplifting content, but that's where we'll be speaking about this nonprofit and putting out news of ways people can help. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Oh yeah, of course, because it's so important that we give back.
It is.
As we're transcending, as we're growing and offering our skills, there's just so much we can give beyond ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I love it. That's that whole leading piece. You're getting the feel for what the Leadership Heart podcast really is about. It's going within, learning about ourselves, becoming self-aware, learning about ourselves. I say that again, then going into say, okay, so now how do I want to live?
Yes.
What are the choices I want to make? What can I do differently? So you shared some wonderful tips and strategies, insights from someone who has led at the highest level, who's achieved, being recognized as that top leader. You've done that. You've demonstrated that. You are it. I am it. That's the key piece. And all other persons, whether you're, you aspire wherever you are in your journey to perhaps maybe lead 550, amazing soldiers, or you just want to lead yourself to have an amazing life, it
Yes.
just begins with that choice, doesn't it? The
Yes.
choice
Absolutely, Sandra.
positive to live fully with ourselves and then give of ourselves. And that's that whole leadership realm. So I want to make sure people can get a hold of you. Is there any other ways that you would love people to connect with you?
Yes. So on my Facebook, either my personal Facebook page, or if you could follow my professional page, Elite Leadership with Major JJ Mahoney, that would be great. And also you could email me at jennifer@eliteleadersolutions.com.
I love that. We are talking to a major. My husband was in the military when he was younger. He was a first warrant officer, was a fighter. He flew planes and stuff. And so I always have such respect for the dedication, the commitment, the sacrifice, like truly the sacrifice that, so many people make. It just really touches my heart. And I love how, though, you are this vibrant, amazing woman who is doing some great things. We share so many common passions.
I'm so honored to be here with you,
It's
Sandra.
I could just keep chatting and talking and sharing and giving gifts to people. And and that's the cool piece. That's why I love, the podcasting in the world where I can connect with amazing leaders like yourself. So please, everyone, take time today to ask yourself powerful questions. What are you prepared to do? What are you prepared to release and let go if you are not truly living the life that you want? You can change it. You can choose to have a different life. Reprogram this lovely subconscious mind. You are not your past. You don't need to be anxious about the future. Just choose today to live in your presence. This is what wonderful Jennifer is doing. This is what we all do when we choose this moment. So make it purposeful. Absolutely live in your power and be anything and all things that you're capable of. So I thank you for coming today. I'm so sad to say goodbye because I know more.
Me too. We'll have to do this again, Sandra.
Oh, you're so delightful. Thank you, everyone. And please do check out Jennifer. She's an exceptional leader, a wonderful, wonderful person. So thank you for all your sacrifices again. I'm going to send you back down and I'll meet you on the other side. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Bye for now, everyone.